Hey, welcome. It's Craig Fisher. I'm here with Jim Durbin. We are here to talk to you about what we know so far about Indeed's banning of XML feeds from third parties for jobs, meaning employers are going to have to, at least for now, play their game, connect directly from an ATS into Indeed's system. Indeed is attempting to collect a lot of interesting data and then charge us for using that data. Um, we've had over the years, Jim and I, dealings and projects with multiple customers, mostly large, Fortune 50, 100, uh, where there are issues within the ATS that makes jobs come out of the system badly for Google and Indeed. And without XML markup around it, a lot of these jobs are not going to be fit for viewing. So, Jim, why don't you catch us up? Tell us a little bit about you and what we've seen so far and what we know.
Sure. Real quick, Jim Durbin, affectionately known as the Indeed Whisperer. I run responsible recruitment marketing. I work well with Craig and TalentNet Live over a decade now, if you think about it. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, I'm wearing the hat since people give me grief if I don't, no matter how hot it is in Texas. I've been. The whole point of the Indeed Whisperer is that I understand advertising and marketing in relation to TA. So they're not quite the same things because for years, our job as recruiters and talent acquisition was to get people hired. We know the process, we know how to interview, we know how to screen. In the last 10 years, technology has really caught up, and now we have all this automation. We have AI taking care of things, screening resumes, building emails. It's doing all this stuff for us, but we haven't really caught up. And what's happened is that we start posting our jobs. When you think about how we post our jobs, we post them to an ATS for compliance. And that ATS is usually purchased by the finance department with minimal, input from TA because it's designed to make sure that we don't get sued and to track where candidates are. The challenge is marketing and advertising isn't built like that. Like if you think of it this way, your radio ad is not going to look the same as your Google ad. And if you try to create one single source of truth that all ads flow from, of course, it'll look bad. And that's the situation we are now. We build things in ATS for our job description, and then we create a second one for our marketing job description. And then for every vendor, it's different. Indeed's different than ZipRecruiter, which is different than Vivian. So what we've done is that agencies or companies individually create what's called XML, which is a really fancy way of saying they're taking our data and they're making it clean, they're making it pretty, so that it's better reserved for advertising options. It allowed us as TA to focus on our jobs, which is putting people to work, rather than focusing on data quality, what something looks like in marketing, and allowed people like you and me to actually craft these great advertising campaigns that works for everybody because we're not dealing with the source data. That's coming to an end. When I say it's coming to an end, we've got a lot of pushback about that because it was just a letter that said new single source XML is done. So let me kind of break it down as fast as I can. Single source XMLs, new ones right now, are not allowed on Indeed, which means your agency can't onboard a new client. They can't create, if you get a new ATS or something, they can't create a new source of feeds to send your jobs to. That's what's happening right now. However, Indeed's also made it very clear to the agencies that are involved that multi-source is going away as well, and that everything in the future will come directly from the ATS. They are cutting off our ability to clean and manage those feeds because it doesn't work for them, and they want different access to different data. So the most important thing is don't think that you're okay just because the alligator hasn't eaten you yet. Yes, single source only occurs today, but multi-source is going away, and all agencies and all ATSs are being pushed towards driving all of their data back to the Indeed platform. So it's not basically the bombing arms, the bombers have taken off, but we've got 10 to 20 minutes before they land. This is a huge moment for us because what we're being forced to do is Indeed is saying we want all this information inside our platform. And if you want access to what we have, which is the largest source of external candidates for most companies that are out there, you have to play by our rules and our rules alone. And that means that talent acquisition, as we mature and get better with marketing technology, with advertising, with AI, we're going to have to start paying attention to data cleanliness. And that means that what you're posting in your ATS, the way you're posting your jobs, your process, your time to fill, your reporting, Indeed says you're doing it wrong. If you want to use them, you have to do it the way that they use it. That's the short of it. And there's no hiding behind it. There's no pretending. They've come out and stated this explicitly. You want to play in our game, you play by our rules. And sadly for TA, we have for so long passed that on to other people, not just to agencies, but over to Indeed themselves and said, here, take a bunch of my jobs and then tell me what results I get. And if we want to understand our budgets, if we want to understand where the waste is, how we're spending time and how to get better, we're going to have to start cleaning up our ATSs and our processes.
Right. All right. So a couple of things that you mentioned that I want you to clarify for the viewers. And by the way, if you're watching this, please do post your questions and we'll answer them as we go along. So Jim, what do you mean for the average person by multi-source?
So multi-source, a single source is, boy, it really gets technical. It's just a decision. Single source means one client, one set of jobs. I'm sending that feed over to Indeed. Multi-source means I'm an agency with a lot of clients, so I'm putting all of those into a master feed and sending them over to Indeed. So this is the concern people have. First is if you don't have an agency and you don't have an integrated ATS for the Indeed apply, this won't apply to you. And they're pointing out this is 20% of Indeed's revenue. So a lot of people aren't going to be affected at first. So now it's just, oh, we're not doing single source, or we know we need to use the API. We'll be able to use the job update API and agencies will be able to work around it. So when we say single source or multi-source, we mean XML feeds in general are going away. There's also some questions of what happens to companies that aren't ATSs like Chatter and Phenom and others. They're not going to shut those off today, but Indeed's made it very clear they would rather not have jobs than get them from a source other than the ATS. So there's a lot of confusion around that. But basically, from now on, moving forward, maybe not this month, but 3 months, 6 months, certainly by 2026, they only want jobs from an ATS that's integrated. They've been pretty clear about that. We're not going to cut it off tonight, but it's coming. And if you're not prepped for it, it's going to be shocking to you.
Well, it will happen overnight if you haven't started preparing for it. At some point, it will absolutely happen overnight. And think about your process inside your organization. You want to spin up a project to acquire software or make a process change or whatever it is. It takes months, right? And so that's after you start planning. It takes months to approve things and make a move. So, our suggestion here is start looking at this now and what this means. So multi-source, XML feed or direct API access from the ATS with Indeed's integrated system. Indeed is trying to get your end-to-end data, right? That's what they want. They want to see all the way to the end. Right now, the way Quick Apply works is somebody applies and generally the information goes to a spreadsheet or it might go directly into your ATS, but it doesn't come back to Indeed. And that's exactly what they want. They want to see the entire outcome so that they can claim ROI, right? Give you better candidates. And in fact, serve up candidates that are more like the people who you did actually hire. Now, in theory, this is a great idea. But in reality, it's going to cost more per candidate. All of the interesting spot technology that we've started using to filter candidates, right, from those who are fraudulent applicants or just not qualified, is going to become important again, I think, because one of the things that this introduces is the fact that Indeed is now saying they know what's best for you, and you may not have any control over that. All right. So next then, Jim, can you quickly sort of recount or recap what the actual Indeed announcement said? And here, let's take a question here real quick. Okay. So one of our users says, Indeed is not letting some Bamboo HR ATS customers refresh jobs from Bamboo anymore. That's interesting.
Of course, because to them, refresh is, when we say refresh, the problem is we remember Career Builder and Craigslist from 20 years ago.
Right.
It's getting your job to the top. So in duration-based posting, the person who most recently posted their job's at the top. So you refresh it to make it look new. That doesn't work in an auction advertising environment. So what they mean is they want you to post the job and leave it, and you can't just change your job ID. You just can't repost the job because you're faking it to pretend that it's fresh.
That's right.
So, however, your agency has been doing that by giving it new job ideas. So if it's evergreen, if it's remote, if it's a travel job, if it's open for relocation, or if it's just old, like if you've got a job that's been open 9 months and you don't want to close it because you have candidates, because it's not a warehouse job you're trying to fill in 3 days, your agency has changed that to put a fresh job. This is a huge impact. You and I have walked through this a number of times because Indeed and denied this for years, but we've run this. We run this. We know exactly. We know that you're overspending 20% because you're cloning templates out of your ATS. The way that you post jobs is costing you 20% of your advertising budget. And when we point that out, no one believes it until we go to the lowest paid person in the company, watch them do it and say, those 3 things right there are costing you an additional $15,000 a month. It's shocking when it happens because the ATS isn't built for that. So no, you're not going to be able to refresh your jobs. You're going to have to create them from scratch, which is not the same as a template. And they have to be perfect because you won't be able to edit them because the first way you post it is what matters. Every time you change a job, it can take up to 72 hours for the Indeed bid optimizer to pay attention to it again. So we're not doing small stuff. All the little tricks that you've played that you've been able to get around the system, they're basically closing off little by little, saying, we want you to post jobs the way we post them, which means no evergreens, no travel, no remote. Just leave your job open for 9 months because they're not worried about that.
And you get what you get. That's right.
You get what you get.
Yep.
Which is another problem because quality started to fall. The whole reason they're saying this is for the job seeker first. They want to focus on the job seeker first. So to them, that means speed. They think this is their plan. And this is not conspiracy here. They've announced it. They want you to be able to click on a job. They're going to pick and choose who you go to, and you're going to be able to cut your time to fill in half, all through the Indeed network. And they think that the disposition data and forcing this action upon them is how that's going to work. If your company doesn't hire the way they want, that's not their problem. You have to hire people to fix your process. You have to go back to your ATS and pay for upgrades. You have to pay for consulting. You have to do a different kind of integration. And if the API doesn't work, well, that's on you. So this is the way we want to do it. You guys need to adjust to us. So I'm not surprising that the fact that they even noticed that is a big deal because a lot of people are just throwing their jobs out there and they don't see it at all. It doesn't affect me today. Well, it's going to affect a lot of things. I mean, we shouldn't be able to cut your budget 50% without a lot of effort. That's not a good sign for anybody.
That refresh thing
when it doubles because you weren't posting your jobs.
Well, and okay, so you're not posting your jobs on a regular basis. You're supposed to just leave it for 9 months. You can't refresh that same job. If it goes down in ranking, then it does. Too bad. You have to create a net new job and start over with new candidates. Why haven't you hired those candidates that we gave you in the first place? Is what Indeed's
that's
saying.
a huge point, Craig. I don't want to interrupt you on that, but because I've been going through the job posting and the disposition data API documents, it explains a lot of things. I was so successful when I was doing stuff at PSG. The engineering disposition data. If you're not offering disposition data, if your ATS is not offering enough disposition data, which is if I have 1,000 Indeed applicable jobs through my ATS and only 500 of them are telling Indeed what information, what's happening at every stage, that ATS is ranked lower and it impacts the algorithm. So they will throttle you. If you don't have an ATS that gives disposition data and you don't post jobs, you're going to get worse results. That's a huge problem because it means there's a one size fit all for how we hire. And that disposition data that they're asking for, it's not going to help them with quality. Because think of it this way. I can't believe this. Let's just toss this out here. Mobley versus Workday. The problem is that people over 40 felt they were discriminated against, and now there's a class action lawsuit claiming that's Workday's AI stack ranking that did the problem. How is that different? If you're looking at disposition data and your company doesn't hire people over 40, that means if I apply for Indeed, they're not going to send me to that job. How is that not the exact same problem? They are taking any discrimination that exists or any appearance of discrimination. If I'm applying for intern jobs, it's not surprising I don't get them. But they'll take that data and then they'll stop people coming to that company based on faulty disposition data, assuming it's even correct. I mean, that's a shocking self goal that they're about to make, which is they're going to tell people what jobs they can have based on who got hired. That's just amazing to me. And let's say you're a great company. Let's say you have a secret sauce. You hire people that are non-traditional. You're great at picking up skills or something else. Well, now Indeed's going to take that, track that, and sell that to your competitors and charge you more for that same bit. So it's a way of averaging everything out for their benefit. And I get the theory. I get why they're saying that they need to do this. The question is, are you going to allow it? It's TA. Are you okay with them telling you you're doing it wrong and forcing you to make a change? And if not, are you going to look for other areas? Are you just going to sit back and do whatever they say, hand them the money and say, well, I got to focus on other priorities? So these are not
I'm too
issues.
busy. That's right. I'm too busy to mess with it. So we'll just do it Indeed's way for now. And guess what happens? You never end up changing if you do it like that, because you just get comfortable and you're just going to spend more money. And there's a lot of waste involved in that. So you can't refresh jobs anymore because Indeed says that's not doing it the right way. Okay, great. Also, they're going to use AI with your disposition data to tell you and tell candidates which jobs are a match for them before they even get to see the job. Okay, that's wrong as well. They say this is all for the candidate. That's a lie. We know that. And interesting, I've seen these new AI tools do things that do create bias, if you ask me. They ask you to choose between two photos 80 times. And then it's not really a psychological test, but it's your preference. So like with video creation software and Mid-Journey and image creation software and some of these other tools, they're asking you to dial in your personalization, your personal preference. That's creating a lot of bias right there. And that's essentially what's going to happen with the Indeed algorithm at some point with your disposition data. All right.
It's already going there. So check this out. When you do the smart sourcing, one of the things you can search for is people similar to the jobs that I've applied for, which makes sense. If I applied for a job, you want to put more of those in front of me. But they're also talking about skills-based hiring, which was another fascinating thing in the shareholder report, where they claim that they've gotten 11 million people hired that we wouldn't have hired. They're flat out telling you you're doing a bad job and they fixed it. And their goal is to fix all of it. I mean, this is right out of the shareholder report, which is shocking to me. But let's say one of the things is skills-based hiring, which started as we can't do degree requirements. Let's see if someone can actually do the job. The problem is when you're building your profile. So if I'm looking for a welder, this is one I got the other day. If I'm looking for a welder and I don't have any welding experience and I pull up a job, Indeed will tell me if I'm a fit for that job. Same way that LinkedIn does. Oh, you're missing these skills. Guess what one of the skills is, Craig? Welding. It doesn't matter that I have no experience. I go, oh, I add welding as a skill. Now I'm being pushed to apply for jobs that require welding skill.
And the system's telling you to do
it. A keyword that they themselves told you to add.
That's right.
It's insanity.
LinkedIn does it too. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. All right. So Chris Russell wants to know if this means that if a company uses Workday, the candidate has to apply through Workday. We'll get back to that because that's a yes and a no.
No, they have to apply through Indeed.
That's right. They have to apply through Indeed. That's correct. Joe says the needle keeps moving on what's going to cost us extra. We hear it's a battle as an in-house TA marketing person. Yes, I can imagine it is. We're glad to talk to you about that, by the way, because we understand your pain. David Blevins says, how will this affect long-term viability of platforms like Appcast? Great question. Appcast is asking for the same thing. Jim, you want to talk about that real quick?
So if you're using disposition data correctly, if you've gone through legal and you've gone through cyber and you're looking, like I look at that, you look at that, because individually we understand the context of it. So if I can look at the number of people coming saying we're picking the wrong people and go back to the hiring manager and say, I see where we made our mistakes. Over the broad enterprise, it doesn't work because disposition data is dirty. As for what happens with the programmatics, honestly, I'm a little worried for them. So I've been talking to them and I've been coaching every one of them. Hey, you've got to change your business model. The only good news from all this is that your overall budget doesn't have to change because you're wasting so much in your advertising. You've got to figure out how to take some of the budget that you're blowing because you're not paying attention to your jobs or advertising because it hasn't been a priority, and figure out how to take that in-house clean up your data, decide which platforms that you're using. So it's moving from downstream, you posted the jobs, they fix it, and they send it to an advertising, to upstream, where they're actually inside your systems and coaching you on the best practices, and you're building out a true marketing function. Not much different than MarTech that occurred 15, 20 years ago, where marketing now has technology, it has specialists, creative, design, digital. We've got to get to that point. So it's not necessarily, as TA transforms, plus dealing with AI and everything else that's out there. So it's not you have to spend more, but you do have to have a fungible budget, and you have to plan for it, because most of the problems that we've run into are people going, I can't make that change. It affects this report. It changes this. Or the very real problem of, what do you do when every recruiter is posting the job and you have to fix that? They have to know the correct way, and it changes every 6 months. How do you possibly do change management across your entire organization when their job is not cleaning data, but putting people to work? So the answer is, our business models are going to change, probably for the better. Our question is, are you going to change your models so that you're flexible and can make decisions? And are you just going to give it to Indeed and go, yeah, you're right, you're going to fix our problems, here's more and more money? So it's a long-term question for us. By the time we finally, I agree with the long-term direction. The question is, I don't like being told what to do by somebody who tells me what to do and then profits off of it.
Well, it's a
It just seems
monopoly,
a little
right?
disingenuous.
That's a little monopolistic. And we've seen this before, right, Jim? So companies say to us, we can't possibly change this because it's going to affect all these other things. And when we show them how much money they're wasting and how much they could be spending on other, more productive tools, systems, processes, or, media, that kind of changes. Sometimes real quick, they figure out, okay, well, if we talk to HRIS and if we work on this process improvement and do a little bit of change management with a little bit of help, yes, we actually can make that change. And it happens all the time. I mean, we've seen it multiple times with big organizations who said there's no way we're ever going to change that. That's right.
We have, all of our friends are fixing stuff constantly. The problem is that we always want it easy. The biggest danger there is, if anybody says they can cut your budget, it's the same thing with AI. The second your budget cut, it doesn't come back. The bigger
you don't want
issue
your budget cut necessarily.
If you cut your budget 50%, your CFO is going to look at you pretty funny. So a lot of people are just scared that, hey, this will make us look bad. So they just put their head in the sand and they ignore it because they have so many other priorities. And so this is the best companies are going to come out of this pretty well. A lot of people are going to find out that their job is not forwarding emails back and forth from hiring managers or writing AI emails to candidates. You're going to have to figure out the entire process, which is something for years we've tried to automate and get rid of. I mean, we've been eating our seed corn as recruiters. Now we all have to not grow up, but mature, because if not, these automated, you can't move into the future by automating the past. And most of what we do is built on this 1980s paper walk-in, fill an application and get an interview. And we keep making that faster and faster. I think this is the category error Indeed is. It's not about fast. Fast is a little scary. It's about accurate and respectful and actually getting people jobs and hiring, as opposed to just looking at our numbers. I think that's the biggest issue we have is we've got to be able to force time into this, which means we have to fight for budget and attention and then make change. This is a management question, not a technology question.
Some of these things that we've been trying to automate away are going to come back. And so I've done this in-house as a TA leader and a talent marketing person and as a consultant for, like Jim and I said, together, even for some of the biggest companies in the world. And what we've found is the software vendors, the HR technology vendors, want to sell us this promise, this golden rainbow of automation that is going to actually eliminate your need for recruiting staff and make you more efficient. So what that means, though, is the problem with automation in a lot of these situations is it still requires people to do it. So if you can actually fix your advertising spend budget and realize some sort of savings, you don't have to just make it go away. You don't have to claim, I don't need this money and I'll never get it again. You can reallocate it to better things because you are going to need your recruiters to upskill a little bit. AI tools and advertising budgets and things like this don't really run themselves. People have to understand how to use it. Jim and I have a grand plan that we're going to teach people in your organization or who we can leave behind after we help you fix something like this to do those jobs and to really understand, how your company is going to look in the future and what's going to have to happen. Because apparently we can't just leave it up to third parties forever, according to Indeed. Now, I see this kind of coming back around. Give it a year or so or two, and things are going to change again. But for right now, this is the immediate future. Is what we're seeing.
Absolutely.
All right.
And you're good at those results. If you haven't already, you're going to start to see them. This is not a minor issue that only affects a few of us at a time. And Indeed has other plans. I mean, they're laying out, they're very clear what they want to do. So it may not be you today, but it definitely is going to be you tomorrow. And if you don't understand where your dollars are going, if you can't defend them to your CFO, and I know finance is scary for a lot of people, but if you don't know where your money's going and why, if you're just cutting one check, you're going to be in a real host of troubles, because not only is software companies, I don't want to blame the vendors. I actually love a lot of the vendors because they work very hard to solve our problems, and some of them aren't solvable. We ourselves put ourselves in this position by hoping, oh, that's an easy fix. Okay, I can just knock that out. It's not always expensive, but it is expensive in time. You're either paying with money or you're paying with time, which means you have to fight for budget, protect your people while still getting the work done. So this is a good time to do it. In some ways, we should be a little grateful for Indeed for doing this. Doesn't mean we have to do what they say, but at least they're shining a light and saying, this isn't working the way that we want. Now we have to figure out, what is it we want? Are we in charge of our own destiny? Or we just write a check to somebody else? By the way, this has a lot of historical precedent. Google did this same thing. This is why we always laugh about it. We've been in marketing ourselves for the last 15 years, in addition to just doing the recruiting side of it. So for us, this is a common playbook. I've already seen this play out. Google tried to get disposition data when SEO and SEM began to merge into what they called conversion companies back in 2011 and 2012. And then Google said, we want down to the root access. We want to see every click and everything that happens. Amazon has done this to a lot of sellers. And the Google people revolted. All the Google agencies revolted. So Google says, we're not giving you our data. Indeed saying, the ATS has to give us data if you want this. The agencies have to force it, and clients have to. So there's a precedent for people going, oh, hell no. But you have to be aware of it. And the danger for us is there's not enough marketers out there in recruitment marketing. There's maybe a couple of hundred, maybe a couple dozen that are really, really good at what we do. That's not enough for everybody. So how do we pass that information on when the problem is you do the process? So it might be worse for us, but we've seen this before. It's not inevitable.
Also, it's okay. So Mark Dries says some of this matching that we're talking about is illegal under the AI Act. Well, in the best of all worlds, yes, but in reality, it's barely enforceable in most cases. We're going to see what happens with some of these civil lawsuits and some of these group lawsuits that occur, but this is not, in marketing terms, any of this is not unheard of. So now it's really the Amazon way. We do give them that disposition data, what happens with a seller and a buyer in a product. Netflix, same thing. We've been giving them this data forever. We give it to Apple. We give it to Microsoft. This is standard stuff in marketing terms. Okay, so we've got a really interesting question here. Diane Holden, is this a topic I should take to my Indeed rep? They don't know anything yet, we found out. So
the answer is yeah. Craig, we're going to have to come up with a list of questions, because the only way this stuff, what they're actually saying to people with agencies is, oh, you have this problem, go to your Indeed rep, even though a lot of companies don't have their own Indeed rep, because they also want you to leave the agency and go work with them. So we should be bombarding. When they did the CPA rollout is it 2 years ago? When they did the CPA roll-up, they backed off because they got so many complaints from small and mid-sized businesses. Mm-hmm. There was basically, you need to hire people to check our Indeed dashboard and make sure in 72 hours everybody's been cleared off, or we're going to charge you. And SMB just had a complete revolt, and they backed off of it because the complaints were too much. This is why you notice they're only going after agencies who are, at this point, only 20% of their revenues are coming from agencies who have a client who has an ATS integration with Indeed Apply. So it doesn't affect everybody yet. So they're going to ratchet that down, closing those off to get to that point. The best thing to ask is, what are we supposed to do? They get enough of those questions, they'll slow this down, which will give us time to make our own changes. And by the way, I don't think you ever, the idea of, oh, we'll just cut Indeed off. Where are you going to get your people from? You don't have the resources to turn around and completely cut them off. You've spent too long utilizing them, and they're still a good source and they can still provide good candidates. But you have to decide how far you're going to go along with that.
I mean,
the answer is make noise about it. Ask.
You should ask.
Hold them accountable for it.
But your reps aren't going to know anything yet. We've seen that they're not distilling the full picture to all of their Indeed reps in the first place. Also, your Indeed rep is going to say, how do we get more spend out of you? That's kind of their
I'll be happy to answer these questions if you give me disposition data. That's been exactly so common. Right. They're so desperate for it. It's fascinating to me. They want it so badly. And as Mark was pointing out, in the EU, you can't. So is Indeed going to destroy that data after 6 months? Because if you're doing that in the EU right now under GDPR, or you're trying to follow up with that, you're literally breaking the law. And it may be toothless or it may be serious for you, but those companies are just going to say, no, we don't have the laws quite in place here. But think about salary data. So if you're pulling things directly from the ATS and you don't have an agency cleaning it and making sure that salary data, almost half of the states, Sumser was telling me about this, John Sumser was telling me about this from salary.com, about almost 50% of the country is now covered under salary. You have to, salary transparency, you have to post it in the job. I hate to tell you all this, but if your recruiters are posting all your jobs, you're missing a lot of salary data, or it's wrong. And there are lawyers that are out there with AI scraping those sites. You're going to hit with a class action because Indeed's going to pull that data out of your ATS and you didn't clean it. It's not their fault. It's your fault for not having it correct, but it's a blind spot you didn't even know about. So that's the bigger danger, is what happens when compliance and chief security officers, if you have an integrated ATS, you can go in and click a button and share disposition data. What does that look like? If your CISO has not looked at that, if you don't have a CISO, if they're not aware of that, you're talking about long-term damage to the company that's going to come down on you because you weren't paying attention, because you just want to write a check and make it go away. You're focused on other priorities. So there's a lot of avenues to get this done, but don't think you can hide from it. I mean, it's going to be an issue.
Right. So I wish I could say there are 5 things that you should look at, but there's not. There's 50. And it's different in every organization, because all of your applicant tracking systems have been customized to an extent for your specific process. And so, Jim and I are offering to look at your process, your system, and see what needs to be adjusted. Chris Russell wants to know what's the alternative for TA. There's not much. Okay, so this is funny what Jim said a minute ago. We're just going to shut down Indeed or turn it off. There are some companies that don't do much with Indeed and they don't have volume hiring issues. Okay, fine. But this is the same argument that I see with companies saying, we're just going to quit advertising with LinkedIn or buying recruiter seats. They never do. So good luck with that if that's your plan. So Jim, what are some of the alternatives for TA? You're going to keep using Indeed, but you're going to clean up your data because it's going to come right out of your ATS.
You got to get control of your stack and your advertising. Yeah. So it's not a bad thing to clean up your data. Again, it's not impossible. It's painful at first, but you're going to get better reporting. You're going to get sued less. Your compliance is there. Your company is going to understand better how posting jobs works. So the first thing is, how do you post jobs? That's our first question we always ask. And it's amazing how long it takes to get, yes, but how do you do it? Yes, but who does it? So is it just an automated piece? Do you have someone that's checking on it? Right. Where's the edit? Because the agency taking away the XML is taking away an important edit. It's like taking away the editor. You don't know what's going to go out there. So how you post your jobs. Then what is your integration actually saying? What does the data actually look like going into and out of not just Indeed, but all of your systems? Mm-hmm. That's a question that we're not very good at because most of us don't come from a tech background. The third is, just because it's coming out of your ATS, are you going to create 2 systems, one for Indeed and one for Vivian, ZipRecruiter, and everybody else? Every vendor has their own fields. And by the way, what do you do when your field breaks? So now you're going to have to monitor your feeds, honor how you did your process, understand those integrations. And this is before you get to how you spend your money or how you do sourcing or all the rest of it. So it really starts with understanding how you actually post. It's like how a bill becomes a law, how you post jobs, what you basically, who makes the decision and who's auditing it. So those are the three big things is how you post the jobs, what your integration actually says, not does it work, because your IT will go, well, it works. That's like saying, Craig, I sent 30,000 emails. You're like, yeah, and they all went into spam. Yeah,
Or
sending
no
them
one
wasn't the
responded. It
goal.
didn't work.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
it
Well,
didn't
so
work for. Well, you didn't say that. Did you say you wanted them to be delivered and people open to make money? No, 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 no. We just blasted them out. You've got to get past that, which means you're going to have to hire and fundamentally understand how this impacts your budget. And then the last part is, what else can we do? If you're going to use social traffic, you're going to have to hire a different conversion engine, whether it's something like a Daxtra, a Paradox, or Chatter, or Earn Better, or something like that. I got a podcast with them. I'm going to shout out to them. I'm doing it later today. How do you gauge intent, which is good for all the fake resumes or the bad resumes that are coming in? How do you actually change the application process and rethink it? So these are all positive things, but if you don't know the basics, how can you possibly make decisions? That, I think, is what is so scary. Is it seems like a lot, but you don't have to be perfect. You just have to start. And if you start with your jobs and your ATS, you're going to be in a better position to make those decisions and trust your reporting.
So we're going to post the transcript of all of these questions and answers to the TalentNet Live site. So we've got a page set up for you, talentnetlive.com/ATS_feed, or you can just go to employerseo.com. That'll take you to the same place. And we've already got a list going of things that we think are going to be important. And we'll post these resources to that page. So keep checking back to that. Alex says that Google found that end purchase data turned out not to be a good indicator. And I think he's right. And I think we're going to find out that hiring disposition data is not necessarily going to turn out to be that great either. It's going to have to be further down the stream, 6 months, a year. How long did they stay? That is going to be more important. And I don't know we'll ever get there.
And I understand why people want disposition data. What bothers me is I know how it's going to be used. It's not going to be used to make things better, because skills-based hiring isn't doing that. They're already having a quality issue. We're matching from resumes, for goodness sake. So there's a lot of new technologies out there. Like Jeff Taylor's working on one, Doug Berg's working on one.
Alex Murphy has one.
Yeah, there's a lot of people building this kind of stuff out to change the way that we apply. And then people like JT O'Donnell out there teaching millennials, because we've got a whole group of candidates that have grown up thinking that, you know what, I might as well just throw 1,000 applications because I don't believe I'm going to be treated right anyway. So we've got to literally change the way that people think about applying their jobs. But the disposition data, what really annoys me about it is that all they're going to do is walk in the same way they do all the time. And they're going to have bad reports. They're going to say, look at the hires you have. This is why you should spend more. Saying it's about quality when I know that disposition data is not quality. I've yet to see a client that does it all, because recruiters aren't paid to add everything. You ever seen a negative 5 days to fill? Yeah, because the recruiter didn't put it in until the person finished. I mean, so, and by the way, what's the difference between offer accepted, offer filled, offer made, start, position closed, position filled? All that has to be adjusted to your ATS and matched as disposition data. They're not all the same things.
Steve Doherty commented on this earlier, that candidate self-select is never a good answer. And that you probably 90% of you have some sort of candidate self-select for candidate source or something like that built into your system now, which is a terrible idea.
It's amazing how many people are referrals, huh? You put it at the top because they think it's a game. All these automated systems, it's a game to get past. It's why people lie on knockout questions. There's another question. What happens with knockout questions?
That's right.
Did you know that if you have an integration with the wrong ATS and it's not set up regularly, that 30% of your jobs are showing up as a null error? I'm not going to out that ATS at the moment, but I happen to know because I've seen it. And when I showed the data, no one could believe it, because how could that be possible? Imagine losing 30% of your applicants that you paid for because of a faulty integration. That's the kind of thing that we're not paying attention. Imagine how easy that is to fix in your budget. But pointing it out, now you got to get Indeed together, you got to get your ATS, you got to consult your agency, everybody involved, and go, what's the problem? Once you do that, it's great, but it's not as simple as push a button, I'll solve it for you. You have to be involved. Otherwise, they'll tell you it's not a problem and you'll be blind to that data.
All right. So what Jim and I are starting to do for our customers, and we'll offer to answer your questions about it as well, is an ATS feed rescue and optimization program. It includes an audit to understand what your situation is, then feed mapping, AI search optimization for your jobs and your career site, schema fixes to ensure that your data is transferring properly to Indeed and other sources. And this doesn't mean that your agencies are out of your environment. They're not. We're offering to work with your agencies as well and prepare them to maintain this ongoing. And so we're not counting the agencies out of this. We're partnering with the agencies as well. So we're going to look at the major ATS systems first, but if you have a lesser known one, we'll talk to you about it. And we've got people that we're training for this entire process because we think this is going to be a mass issue that just Jim and I alone aren't going to be able to keep up with. So we're starting to train people in how we look at these schema and feed issues. And listen, XML is a beautiful thing, but we're too reliant on it now. And, it's just going to have to change. So it's going to have to change inside your ATS and inside your own processes. All right. So
And the
one
cleanup
more.
that Craig's talking about, our look at it was that we could just solve the immediate problem. We can put out the fire. Quite frankly, we don't think that's enough. I mean, it's great. They'll pay us a lot to fix it. But the bigger question is what can we do to make sure that you are prepped for things in the future? Because that's one of the issues. You come in, you fix a problem, and then 6 months later, a year later, the tech stack breaks again. So with the Google search, with the AI optimization search, what that means is we're going to do it. We're going to clean your data and make sure your reports are working and your feeds are working, but that we're leaving people behind to continue auditing to make sure it doesn't degrade after time. Those are the clients we're most interested in, because just putting out a fire and bouncing around doesn't solve the overall problem. The real question is, what do we need to do to make sure that these don't come on us? We're not surprised. And there's only a few of us right now. So yeah, we're building capacity long term. We'll be setting up some custom GPTs. We'll be having some quizzes and other stuff to share information for people we can't help in the beginning. So this is a long-term thing. And because the goal is many of you could do this by yourself if you had time and a boss that'll let you do it. That can be very difficult to do because it's not as simple as just fixing some things. You've got to change hearts and minds. So you can do some of this yourself, but did you do it right? So how do we train that next generation of TA leaders to understand that the job is not just putting people to work, but the system by which we put people to work? How are you going to take advantage of it to make it best for your company?
So we have use cases and sort of specific proof points from some of the biggest companies in the world that we can help you to have this conversation with your leaders. And because there is precedent here, change is not impossible. I think that there's hope. It will be good. And I think that also, having this sort of knowledge and control in-house eventually is going to be good for you. It's consolidating your processes and your spend. And that's a good thing for your talent acquisition team, your recruiting staff, your recruiting operations people, your HRIS and marketing teams, risk management, everyone. It's going to be good for the organization. So there's a couple more comments here. I'm going to get to those. If you want to talk to Jim and I about this, you can DM us on LinkedIn or any channel that you're connected to us on, or there's a form you can just send to us at talentnetlive.com/ATS_feed or employerseo.com, goes to the same place. We'll get back to you quickly. let's see here. So Alex says Steve Rothberg. This is how Smashfly sold. They set traffic that came to the career site as source. So this is okay. Listen, I love our ATS vendors. I love our CRM vendors, and I love our recruitment marketing vendors. I work with them all, but they will tell you that your data is good by comparison to their other customers, and that your source is not what it actually is. And that's not their fault. That's the way they've been trained to do it. Megan says, this has been great information. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate you. And Mike Dickinson said, already started the process thanks to Jim. Talk about an exercise that's similar to a root canal. It doesn't have to be that painful. We've done this. It doesn't have to be that painful.
And thank you, Mike. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
That's right. Thank you, Mike. All right, everybody. This has been fun. We'll do it again as we get more updates, but talk to us. We're here to help. This is what we've been doing for the last several years. And it's now coming to a head where we're actually going to be forced to do it rather than just sort of get to pick and choose when we do it. But let's do it. And we're looking forward to those conversations. All right, Jim, thank you.
Thanks, guys.